David, this is Rick at Mr. Stromberg. I want to give you a few quick pointers on your 8x2. I don't normally do videos, but this one's a little complicated. I want to be sure that you can get it apart and get it back together properly. As you can tell right now, everything moves very smoothly, snaps back very nicely, and quite honestly, the pressure is about right for your foot pedal. I will throw in a couple more snapback springs, so if you want to adjust it, you can. But right now, there's only two on it, and it seems to be very good. Okay, first thing for disassembly, you will want to loosen this and this set screw. That pulls on this pull bar. That should allow the entire back bar assembly to spin freely. That is going to be the key when you get it back together too. Once these are removed, and this back bar will just slide and pull out, and the sliders will stay, you can then remove this castle nut and this castle nut. There are lock washers under each, and under this one there is a small thin washer. That's to shim to be sure that this thing's level and there's no bind. Then you can remove the entire back bar assembly. The next thing you'll want to do is to go to each one of the carbs, there's a set screw, and loosen it. Spin this rod and you'll see how smooth it is as it sits. You'll want to slide this out. You'll want to do the same thing for the other bank of carbs. The key here is to be sure that everything is exactly parallel and perpendicular to one another so there's no bind. That's why I had to tighten down all the carbs. You asked me not to do that on shipment, but if I don't, this linkage binds. So, once you've removed the sliders or the straight bar from both sides, you can slide them out, then remove the front and the rear carbs. I would leave the four centers. This should give you access to the four bolts underneath your blower, or to bolt to your blower. Once bolted down, you can basically reverse the process. However, I'm going to be careful to tell you that, remember, on the front, these two have block-off plates underneath them. They need to be put back in the same order. So it's manifold, gasket, block-off plate, carb, because you need to be sure this is completely blocked off. No air whatsoever can get in. When you put the four corner carbs back on, do it very slowly and carefully, because you're going to use the two center carbs as your alignment as you put this slider back on. You're going to go, well, it should just line right back up. The problem is it will not. Each of these carbs has a little bit of play in the base as it goes to the carb stud. So put the four carbs back on and don't tighten them down. Slide back the straight pull rod, and as you do it, be sure that if you have to move these carbs just a millimeter or two, one way or the other, that once again there is no bind inside this thing as you spin it. If it's all set, then tighten these four back down, tighten your carb down. Same thing with the other bank. On the rears, only tighten the two back or front, carb studs, leaving these completely alone. Check once again that you've got free play and that everything snaps back exactly as it was. You won't have to worry about the snapback springs because I have them on these two carbs. That should, and it should work exactly like this. Obviously the back bar won't be on here, so you can flip it this way to be sure that there's no bind. Do the same thing on that bank of carbs. Then when putting the back bar assembly back on, don't forget there's one washer under this side to keep everything in the same plane. And as you put these on, with the lock washers and the acorn nuts, that you slowly do it and assure that there's no bind. This should be free and not locked up here yet, so this thing should spin back and forth very easily, and when I say easily, it should fall. If not, then what you've got is one of these cockeyed. You want to be sure there is absolutely zero bind in this back bar assembly. So as you tighten these down, check and be sure everything's loose and it stays loose. Keep tightening down. Once they're all set and these are all tightened down and this thing's very loose, then you can bring both of these pull bars back up, insert them into these spinners, and then lock down these two lock pins. Once those lock pins are in, check and be sure that it operates just like this. And if it does, then you're all square and ready to go. I do have 2 more banjos coming. They should be here within next day or 2, and your setup will be ready to go. We will probably take the banjos off for shipment because this will be the weak point if something hits the box. They're not very hard to install, obviously, because I can just unscrew them. The front carbs, if for some reason you've got to take off all 8 carbs and you want to know the identifier of which ones are blocked off, you'll notice on the fuel inlet there is a small ring here, and it's a small indent ring. There's only one ring there, where the new ones that operate freely have 2 rings. Hopefully that's all you need to know. Everything's been set at 3/4 backed out on the idle mixture for all 6 operating carbs. This is the carb that has the choke, the operating choke, and what it will do is choke the carb, but it also ups the idle slightly on all 6 operating carbs, and you can barely just see the linkage move, and that's the idea. The kicker is literally that. It kicks up the idle. So if for some reason your idle is running very high, then be sure that the choke is completely off. I think that'll do it. If you have any questions, let me know. And in the meantime, I'm waiting on those 2 banjo fittings, and we'll get her packed up and ready to go for you. Thank you very much for your business. Appreciate it.